Commander Lee Teemin floated in zero gravity as he stared out the viewport of the starship New Sol. The stars looked different here, so far from Earth that the familiar constellations had disappeared entirely. His crew had been traveling for 3 months, following a strange signal that had somehow reached their outer colonies. "Sir, we are getting close to the source," said Lieutenant Park Mina from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as data filled her screen. "I am seeing a large structure ahead." Teemin pushed himself toward the main viewing screen. What appeared before them was unlike anything in their databases. A massive space station drifted in the emptiness, but it looked wrong somehow. Different sections seemed to be built from completely different technologies. Some parts glowed with soft blue light, others appeared to be made of living wood that twisted and curved, and still other sections looked like they were grown from crystal. "How many life forms?" Teemin asked. "At least 7 different species, sir. Maybe more. The life signs are very strange." As they moved closer, Teemin could see beings moving around the outside of the station. Some looked like walking trees with long branches for arms. Others seemed to be made of living crystal that caught the starlight and split it into rainbow colors. He watched in amazement as one crystal being's arm suddenly cracked and broke apart, then slowly grew back together while making musical sounds. "Are they hurt?" asked Dr. Kim Sujin, the ship's medical officer. She had joined Teemin at the viewing screen. "I do not think so," Mina replied. "The breaking and healing seems to be normal for them. The signal we received calls them the Outcasts." "Outcasts from what?" "Something called the Celestial Hierarchy. According to the message, these beings have been thrown away by the rest of the galaxy." Teemin frowned. In all of humanity's years exploring space, they had never found other intelligent life. Now they had stumbled upon not just one alien species, but many. And apparently these species were part of some larger galactic community that Earth knew nothing about. Why were they thrown away? Sujin asked. Mina read from her screen. "The message says they have genetic flaws. They are too primitive or broken to be useful to the hierarchy." Through the viewport, Teemin watched a group of the plant-like beings working on what looked like a damaged section of the station. Instead of using tools, they were growing new metal directly from their bodies. The crystal beings were using their natural breaking and reforming ability to create intricate patterns that seemed to strengthen the station's hull. "Genetic flaws," Teemin said quietly. "They look pretty amazing to me." A new voice came over the communication system, speaking in a language that their computers slowly translated. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself. We did not expect anyone to answer our signal." Teemin activated the communications. "This is Commander Lee Teemin of the human ship New Sol. We received your distress call. Are you in need of help?" There was a long pause before the voice returned, now with excitement. "You are not from the hierarchy? You came here to help us." "We came because someone asked for help. That is what humans do." On the station, Teemin could see beings gathering at the viewports to look at their ship. The crystal beings were flashing with different colors, the plant beings were swaying like trees in wind, and he could just make out energy beings that looked like living light floating near the windows. "Commander," said the voice, "I am Root Seeker of the Verdani. I speak for the outcasts of Station Refuge. We have been alone for so long. The hierarchy told us we were broken, worthless. They moved us here to the edge of space to die." "What makes you broken?" Teemin asked. "My people need special soil to live. The crystal singers fracture randomly. The luminals cannot hold solid form. The resonants exist partly in other dimensions. The hierarchy says we are genetic failures who waste resources." Teemin looked at his crew. Dr. Sujin was already preparing her medical kit. Engineer Choi Minho was studying the station's structure with obvious interest. Quantum specialist Yang Hyori was trying to understand energy readings unlike anything she had ever seen. "Root Seeker," Teemin said, "we would like permission to come aboard your station. My people are very interested in meeting yours." "You want to meet us? Even knowing what we are?" "Especially knowing what you are. In human history, our greatest achievements came from bringing different peoples together. What others call flaws, we might call gifts." As the New Sol moved toward the docking port, Teemin thought about Earth's long journey to the stars. Humanity had spent centuries learning that differences between people made them stronger, not weaker. Now they had found an entire galaxy that had forgotten that lesson. The hierarchy had thrown away these beings like broken tools. But Teemin could already see that each species had abilities that could be wonderful if given the right environment. The crystal singers created music with their bodies. The plant people could grow technology organically. The energy beings could probably interface with computers in ways humans never imagined. As the airlock sealed and artificial gravity took hold, Teeman realized that humanity had just found its purpose among the stars. They would not be explorers or conquerors. They would be the species that saw beauty in what others called worthless. The galaxy had its outcasts. Now the outcasts had found their champions. Dr. Kim Soo-jin stepped through the airlock into a world unlike anything she had ever imagined. The air itself seemed to sing with soft musical notes, and the walls around her were made of living crystal that pulsed with gentle light. Her medical scanner was going crazy trying to understand the life forms moving around her. "Welcome, humans," said a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "I am Melody of Breaking Light." Soo-jin looked up to see a being made entirely of translucent crystal. The creature was roughly humanoid in shape but seemed to be constantly shifting. As she watched, a crack appeared in Melody's shoulder and spread down her arm with a beautiful ringing sound. Instead of pain, the crystal being seemed to enjoy it. "Does that hurt?" Soo-jin asked, pulling out her medical equipment. "Hurt?" Melody tilted her head, creating more musical tones. "No, this is how we sing. How we communicate. The hierarchy said we were broken because our bodies crack and change. They tried to fix us many times." Soo-jin held up her scanner and watched the readings in amazement. The cracks were not random at all. They followed perfect mathematical patterns, creating acoustic frequencies that carried complex information. "This is not broken," she said with wonder. "This is the most sophisticated biological communication system I have ever seen." In another section of the station, engineer Choi Min-ho was crawling through what had once been a waste processing unit. Now it looked more like a garden paradise. Thick vines covered every surface, and the air smelled like fresh earth after rain. "Careful where you step," said a deep, rustling voice. "The root systems are delicate." Minho looked around until he spotted the speaker. Root Seeker was twice his height, with bark-like skin and branches instead of arms. Nutrient-rich sap flowed through visible channels in his body, and small flowers bloomed and died along his limbs in constant cycles. "Did you grow all this?" Minho asked, his engineering mind trying to understand what he was seeing. "My people cannot live without specific soil conditions," Root Seeker explained. "The hierarchy said we were too demanding. Too much trouble. So they gave us this broken station and told us to survive." Minho watched as Root Seeker extended a tendril into the wall itself. Where it touched, new growth appeared, strengthening the metal structure while creating a perfect ecosystem. The waste that came into this section was being broken down into pure nutrients and clean air. "This is not demanding," Minho said, shaking his head. "This is genius. You have created a closed-loop life support system. You turned garbage into a paradise." Meanwhile, quantum specialist Yang Hyori was having the most confusing conversation of her career. She sat in a room filled with strange energy patterns, trying to talk to a being that kept shifting between solid matter and pure light. "I apologize," said Flickering Thought, their forms sparkling like electricity. "My people cannot maintain stable physical forms. We are considered defective by hierarchy standards." Hyori watched her quantum computer screen fill with impossible calculations. Every time Flickering Thought shifted from matter to energy, they were solving complex mathematical problems at the speed of light. "Defective?" Hyori laughed. "You are interfacing directly with our most advanced computers. You are thinking at quantum speeds. How is that defective?" "We cannot build ships or cities," Flickering Thought replied, their form brightening with what might have been embarrassment. "We cannot hold tools or touch solid things reliably." "But you can touch information itself," Hyori realized. "You can manipulate data at the quantum level. Do you have any idea how amazing that is?" Back on the command deck, Commander Teeman was meeting with representatives from all the outcast species. There were 7 different groups living on the station, each one supposedly flawed in the eyes of the celestial hierarchy. The resonance existed partially in subspace, which made them excellent at detecting things across vast distances but terrible at staying in one place. The drift touched aged at random rates, sometimes becoming very old overnight and sometimes returning to youth. The phase walkers could move through solid matter but could not always control when it happened. "Each of you has abilities that the hierarchy calls problems," Teeman observed. "But from what my crew is discovering, these are not problems at all. The hierarchy values genetic purity and technological advancement," explained Root Seeker. "We do not fit their perfect standards." Lieutenant Park Mina had been quietly recording everything she observed. "Sir, I am getting reports from all our teams. Every species here has capabilities that could revolutionize human technology. What do you mean? The Shardsingers could help us build structures using harmonic resonance. The Verdani could solve our food production and life support problems. The Luminals could make our computers thousands of times faster. Timin looked around at the assembled beings. Each one had been told they were worthless, broken, inferior. But his human crew saw something completely different. There is something I do not understand, Timin said. If the hierarchy is so advanced, why did they not see the value in what you can do? They only see one way to be perfect, replied Melody of Breaking Light. Their way. And anyone who is different is thrown away. Timin felt anger building in his chest. Humanity had learned the hard way that diversity was strength, that differences between people created innovation and growth. This hierarchy had apparently learned the opposite lesson. Well, he said firmly, humanity sees things differently. We would be honored to learn from all of you. For the first time since the humans had arrived, all the outcasts began expressing joy in their own unique ways. Crystal's song filled the air, flowers bloomed along wooden limbs, and energy beings danced in patterns of pure light. None of them realized that far across the galaxy, the celestial hierarchy had detected human ships in outcast space, and they were not pleased. Captain Beck Jihoon walked through the streets of New Harmony City and still could not believe what humanity had built in just 8 months. The city rose from the surface of Haven Prime like something from a dream. Crystal spires grew directly from living tree roots, their surfaces singing in the wind while energy beings flowed through transparent tubes that connected every building. The morning report, sir, said Lieutenant Namura, handing him a datapad as they walked. Children ran past them, laughing as they played. Some were human, others were young Verdani with bright green skin, and a few were juvenile Shardsingers whose crystal bodies chimed like bells as they moved. They were all playing the same game together, chasing balls of light that friendly luminals had created for them. How many more ships arrived yesterday? Jihoon asked. 12 transport vessels, sir. Word is spreading fast across the galaxy. More outcast groups are asking for sanctuary. They passed a construction site where human engineers worked alongside their alien partners. A Verdani named Growing Strong was literally growing a new apartment building from the ground up, her root system creating the foundation while her branches formed the frame. Shardsinger architects sang the walls into perfect harmonic structures that would never crack or break. Luminal electricians flowed through the walls, installing energy systems without needing any wires. The coalition sent another message, Yura continued. They are demanding we stop harboring what they call genetic refuse. They want us to hand over all outcasts for proper rehabilitation. Jihoon stopped walking and watched a human teacher showing a group of mixed-species students how to solve math problems. The luminal children were calculating faster than the computers, while Shartsinger students were creating three-dimensional models with their natural crystal growth. The Verdani kids were growing actual plants that demonstrated biological processes. What did we tell them? He asked. The same thing we always tell them. Humanity does not recognize any authority that decides the worth of thinking beings. They entered the central administration building, which was itself a marvel of cooperative engineering. The structure was part grown, part built, and part formed from living light. Rootseeker himself served as one of the main support pillars, his massive trunk extending up through several floors while his branches provided natural ventilation and lighting. Good morning, Captain Jihoon, Rootseeker's voice rumbled through the building's structure. The morning council meeting is ready to begin. In the council chamber, representatives from 15 different species sat around a table that was both furniture and living organism. The drift-touched counselor appeared to be about 30 years old today, though yesterday she had looked 60. The Phase Walker representative kept flickering in and out of sight, which was normal for his people. The Resonant Scouts have detected something troubling, announced Echo across stars, whose voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Large coalition fleets are gathering near our borders. Dr. Kim Soo-jin, now serving as the Haven World's chief medical officer, shared her latest research. I have been studying coalition genetic records. They modify themselves to fit rigid physical standards. Any natural variation is removed. They make themselves the same? Asked Bright Current, a luminal whose energy form pulsed with curiosity. Exactly the same. The same height, the same features, even the same thought patterns. They believe this makes them perfect. Jihoon thought about Earth's history, how humanity had nearly destroyed itself when some groups decided others were inferior. It had taken centuries to learn that differences made them stronger, not weaker. The coalition fears what we are building here, he realized. We are proving that their whole system is wrong. Engineering Chief Choi Minho entered the chamber with exciting news. The Shardsinger crystal networks are complete. The entire planet is now connected by harmonic communication. We can coordinate defense systems instantly. What about the bioships? Jihoon asked. Growing Strong and her team have produced 20 vessels. They are not fast, but they can repair themselves and adapt to any attack. Yang Hyori, now head of quantum research, added her report. The luminal computer integration is beyond anything we imagined. Our processing power has increased by 10,000%. Around the table, beings that the galaxy had thrown away were now working together to create technologies that surpassed anything the Coalition possessed. The resonance provided early warning systems that could detect threats from other dimensions. The phase walkers served as perfect spies and scouts. Even the drift touched, with their unpredictable aging, had found purpose in long-term planning and historical research. There is something else, Yura said quietly. We are getting messages from Coalition worlds. Some of their citizens are asking about defecting. What kinds of messages? Scientists who want to study natural genetic variation. Artists who are tired of creating the same approved works. Engineers who want to try new ideas. Jihoon was not surprised. When people lived in a system that demanded absolute conformity, some would always dream of freedom. Sir, Echo Across Stars suddenly announced, my scouts are detecting massive hyperspace disturbances. A Coalition fleet just jumped into our system. Through the building's living walls, alarms began to sound. The crystal spires outside started singing warning harmonies, while Verdani communication networks carried the alert to every corner of the planet. Jihoon stood up, his expression grim but determined. How many ships? Over 200 vessels. It is the Coalition's first fleet. Around the table, the representatives of the galaxy's unwanted peoples looked at each other. They had all found homes here, purposes, dignity. None of them wanted to go back to being considered worthless. Well, Jihoon said, I guess it is time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate the power of working together. Outside, the crystal spires began singing a new song, not of warning, but of defiance. Fleet Admiral Won Tai-young stood in the command center of the Unity, watching 200 Coalition warships arrange themselves in perfect formation outside Haven Prime. The enemy vessels were beautiful in their uniformity, sleek, white, and identical in every detail. They moved with mechanical precision, like pieces of some giant machine. Coalition Admiral Purity of Form is requesting communication, reported Commander Shin Se-young from her station. Put him through. The main screen filled with the image of a being that looked almost human, but too perfect. His face was completely symmetrical, his skin flawless, his eyes the exact same shade of blue as every other hierarch. When he spoke, his voice carried no emotion whatsoever. I am Admiral Purity of Form of the Celestial Hierarchy. You will immediately surrender all genetic deviants in your possession for proper rehabilitation. Tai-young stepped forward. This is Admiral Won Tai-young of the Human Defense Fleet. The beings you call deviants are citizens of sovereign worlds. We will not surrender anyone. Your species is not recognized by the hierarchy. You harbor genetic refuse. This violates galactic order. The only thing we recognize is the right of all thinking beings to live free from persecution. Purity of Form's perfect features showed the faintest hint of disgust. You choose to stand with the broken and flawed. This decision will result in your extinction. The communication ended. Immediately, the Coalition fleet began moving into attack formation. All ships, prepare for battle, Tai-young commanded. Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for everyone the galaxy has thrown away. The human fleet looked pathetic compared to the Coalition force. Only 50 ships, built from metal and ceramic rather than the energy-based materials of their enemies. But hidden throughout the Haven system were defenses that the Coalition could not see or understand. Energy buildup detected, Se-young reported. They are charging weapons. Activate the crystal networks. Deep beneath Haven Prime's surface, massive Shardsinger constructs began to resonate. The entire planet started to sing, creating harmonic frequencies that spread out through space like invisible shields. The Coalition opened fire first. Brilliant energy beams lanced out from their perfect ships, expecting to destroy the primitive human vessels in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The crystal networks around Haven Prime caught the energy attacks and reflected them back at their sources. Coalition ships found themselves being hit by their own weapons. Alarms began sounding across the enemy fleet as their sensors tried to understand what had just occurred. "Impossible," came Purity of Form's voice over the communication channel. "Your technology is primitive." "Our technology is cooperative," Tai Young replied. The second wave of attacks came from a different direction. Bioships grown by the Verdani emerged from hidden positions among the asteroids. These vessels looked like giant plants floating in space, their hull made of living wood and metal-eating vines. Coalition energy weapons struck the bioships and did almost nothing. The living hulls absorbed the energy and used it to grow stronger. Worse, spore clouds began drifting from the bioships toward the Coalition fleet. "What are those particles?" demanded a Coalition captain over the communication channel. His question was answered when the spores reached his ship. They began eating through the hull's perfect surface, creating random holes that disrupted the vessel's sleek design. The ship's targeting systems, designed for mathematical precision, could not adapt to the chaotic damage patterns. But the real surprise came when the luminal beings joined the fight. Bright current and dozens of other energy-based life forms flowed directly through space toward the Coalition ships. Their forms could not be targeted by conventional weapons, and when they reached the enemy vessels, they began flowing through the hulls themselves. Inside Coalition ships, computer systems began failing as luminal beings rewrote their programming in real time. Navigation systems sent ships in random directions. Weapons fired on their own allies. Communication networks filled with music and poetry instead of tactical data. "This is chaos," Purity of Form screamed. "This violates all principles of proper warfare." The Coalition's perfect formations broke apart as ships lost control of their systems. Some vessels tried to retreat but found their navigation computers telling them to fly toward the planet instead. Others attempted to continue fighting but discovered their weapons were now shooting harmless light shows instead of deadly beams. Phase Walker infiltrators appeared inside Coalition ships, walking through walls to disable critical systems before vanishing again. Resonant beings struck from other dimensions, their attacks coming from directions that three-dimensional sensors could not detect. "Admiral," Su Young reported with amazement in her voice, "the Coalition fleet is retreating." Through the viewscreen, Tai Young watched the perfect white ships limping away from Haven Prime. Many trailed growing vines that continued to eat their hulls. Others spun helplessly as their control systems played Schatzsinger music instead of following commands. "Purity of Form, this is Admiral Tai Young," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Take this message back to your hierarchy. Every being you have thrown away as broken or flawed is now under human protection. If you attack us again, you will face not just our ships, but the combined abilities of every species you consider worthless." The Coalition Admiral's final transmission was filled with rage. "This is not over, humans. The hierarchy will not tolerate this chaos. We will return with a force that will cleanse this system of all genetic impurity." As the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, Tai Young looked around his command center. His crew was cheering, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Coalition would not accept defeat. They would return with more ships, better weapons, and new strategies. But they would also be facing an enemy they did not understand, an alliance built not on conformity and perfection, but on the idea that differences created strength. The galaxy's unwanted had just proven they were far from helpless. President Lee Soo-hyun stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible just 2 years ago. Representatives from over 60 species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a rainbow of diversity that the old hierarchy could never have imagined. In the front row sat Melody of Breaking Light, now the elected speaker for all crystal-based life forms. Her body chimed softly as she moved, and the mathematical patterns of her natural fractures had become the basis for the Republic's new communication networks. Next to her, Rootseeker's massive form served as both representative and living pillar, his branches providing oxygen for the entire assembly. 1 year ago, the celestial hierarchy told the galaxy that genetic purity meant strength. Soo-hyun began, her voice carrying clearly through both audio systems and harmonic crystal networks. "Today we gather to prove that diversity creates power beyond anything they ever imagined." In the audience, former Coalition species sat beside their former victims. The rigid caste that had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years were crumbling as more planets chose freedom over conformity. Even some hierarchs had defected, choosing to embrace natural variation over artificial perfection. Dr. Kang Minji, now the Republic's chief science advisor, took the stage to present their latest achievements. Behind her, a holographic display showed impossible technologies that combined the abilities of multiple species. The biocrystal ships grown by Verdani-Schatzinger partnerships can heal themselves while singing through hyperspace, she announced. Luminal human quantum processors solve problems that would take the old coalition computers centuries to calculate. The audience watched in amazement as the hologram showed a phase walker moving through solid matter to repair a ship's interior while resonant beings detected threats from parallel dimensions. Drift-touched engineers, with their unpredictable aging, provided both ancient wisdom and youthful innovation to every project. We are not just stronger together, Minji continued. We are becoming something entirely new. Yang Hyori, now Director of Integrated Technologies, stepped forward to demonstrate their most recent breakthrough. She activated a device that looked like living art, crystal formations growing through metallic trees while energy patterns flowed between them like captured lightning. This is a planetary defense grid that thinks, grows, and adapts, she explained. It combines Schatzinger harmonics, Verdani biological engineering, luminal quantum processing, and human systems integration. No single species could have created it alone. The demonstration showed how an attacking fleet would face defenses that literally evolved during battle. Crystal networks would sing new protective frequencies while bioships grew specialized weapons in real time. Luminal beings would rewrite enemy computer systems while phase walkers disabled ships from within. Commander Baek Ji-hoon, now Minister of Defense, presented the military situation. 17 former coalition worlds have joined the Republic. Their citizens were tired of being forced to fit rigid standards of genetic perfection. The Great War had lasted only 6 months, but it had changed everything. The coalition's perfect ships and identical strategies could not adapt fast enough to face enemies who turned every difference into an advantage. Each battle had showcased new combinations of abilities working together in ways the hierarchy had never imagined possible. The remaining coalition forces have retreated to their core worlds, Ji-hoon continued. But we do not seek to conquer them. Our victory is not in destruction, but in choice. Fleet Admiral Won Tae-young approached the podium as images of the final battle appeared on the screens. The coalition's last stand at their capital world had been expected to be their greatest victory. Instead, it had become their moment of transformation. We surrounded their home system not with weapons, but with examples, Tae-young explained. We showed them cities where different species lived together in harmony. We broadcast stories of beings they had thrown away now serving as leaders and innovators. The images showed coalition citizens watching in amazement as former outcasts demonstrated abilities that surpassed anything their perfect society had achieved. Scientists saw luminal beings solving equations at light speed. Artists watched Schatzingers create beauty from breaking and healing. Engineers marveled at Verdani biotechnology that could grow anything needed. Many coalition species chose to join us rather than continue fighting, Tae-young said. Even some hierarchs decided that artificial perfection was less interesting than natural diversity. President Soo-hyun returned to the podium as the assembly prepared for the final vote on the new galactic constitution. The document guaranteed rights regardless of genetics, technology level, or physical form. It established principles that would have been unthinkable under the old system. Today we vote not just on laws, but on the future of our galaxy, she announced. Will we return to the old ways of throwing away anyone who is different? Or will we embrace the idea that every thinking being has value? The vote was unanimous. Even the former coalition representatives raised their hands in support. As the session ended, Soo-hyun looked out at the celebrating crowd. Children of dozens of species played together in the halls outside, their laughter creating music that the crystal walls amplified and shared throughout the building. Former outcasts now served as ambassadors, scientists, artists, and leaders. Through the great windows, she could see the orbital city growing around the assembly station. Schatzinger spires reached toward living Verdani gardens while energy beings flowed through transparent tubes connecting every section. Ships from across the galaxy docked at ports that adapted to any species' needs. The hierarchy had claimed that differences were weakness, that genetic purity led to strength. But humanity had taught the galaxy a different lesson. They had shown that what others called broken could be beautiful, that what seemed flawed could be perfect in its own way. The galaxy's outcasts had found their champions, and in doing so, they had become champions themselves.